This is Wraith from Wraith Rain. I'm an author of serialized gay romance fiction. Every week on this podcast, I'll be reading a chapter from one of my gay fantasy shifter serials called Dragon's Reign. I'll explain at the break how you can find out more about this story and others I write. So let's get to it. Chapter 30. Size of Your Dragon. Caden woke up to his little sister hawking over him. He grimaced and rubbed his face with both hands. "What's up, Till?" he asked, his voice still thick with sleep. Last night's shift and flying, and the kiss, had exhausted him. It felt too early to be up, and his alarm hadn't gone off. It was his sister poking him in the side again and again that had finally roused him. "You're in trouble," she said simply. "Mom and Dad are on the warpath, and I'm suffering for your mistakes." He looked at her blearily. What? Why? And how?" "They were hysterical after hearing about the humans' first bombing last night. And instead of getting a call, text, or email from you, they had some of those claw people show up in civilian clothes. Those clothes are fooling no one, by the way. The whole neighborhood is buzzing about us receiving the King's Guard," she said. That had Caden rocketing upright and nearly bumping his head with his sister's. Luckily, she had the reflexes of a cat. His dragon reflexes seemed to be dormant, as Iolaire had cracked one eyelid and gone back to bed after realizing it was Tilly. "I couldn't call, text, or email them because," he grimaced. He couldn't because he'd been hiding behind a market stall watching the humans' first meeting that had been bombed, and he couldn't leave any trace, electronic or otherwise, of him anywhere by the meeting. And then they'd been doing the shifting thing and clothes had disappeared, and he really hadn't thought much about anything except a certain dragon king. "They were told I was fine, Tilly, in person. That should be more than enough." "Caden, have you lost your mind?" Tilly's hands were on her hips. She so looked like their mother at that moment that he almost laughed and pointed it out. Not wanting her to punch him, he remained silent. I don't think..." "You must have if you think our parents would accept anything except for you to be home safe." Tilly actually pinched the top of her nose. That was like their dad. He shifted his legs off of the bed and gave her a crooked smile. "So, we have to escape out the window again today, huh?" Her serious expression cracked for a second as a smile threatened to break across her face. "You have to see them. They're not letting me leave the house through the door or window. You are likely going to end up chained in the basement if you keep on like this. Just face them. Figure this out. I want things to go back to normal." "If we went back to normal, you couldn't ride on Iolaire's back." He touched her nose with one finger. She did laugh then, and looked deliriously delighted for a moment. "Flying on a dragon." But then she smacked her forehead with one hand. "Wait! No, don't distract me. This is serious, Caden. You've got to fix things with Mom and Dad, or otherwise we'll both never be leaving this house again." He sighed and scrubbed his face with both hands. She was right. He had to explain to his parents that he didn't want their interference, which already made this conversation with them sound even more unlikely to go in his favor in his head. In the shifting thing, he didn't want ravens writing law briefs about his inalienable rights. The moment this thing headed to the courts, he would be outed, no matter if they called him Dragon Doe #1. Besides, he trusted Valerius now. They were building a friendship? Relationship? He wasn't quite sure. But it was something that didn't need lawyers and judges involved. "I'll fix it, Till," he told her as he pushed himself upright and padded over to the desk chair that was covered in clothes. He found some drawstring pants that looked mostly clean and his favorite soft white t-shirt. He turned back to her. She was biting her lower lip, clearly unconvinced of his convincing skills with their parents. He put an arm around her slender shoulders. "Come on, let's go face the parents." She sighed, and the two of them walked out of his bedroom. The moment they set foot in the hallway, Caden's nose was filled with the most delicious scent of pancakes and bacon. His stomach grumbled in appreciation. Tilly laughed, and they hurried up their pace. While Caden had no desire to actually discuss things with his parents, he wanted those pancakes. They found both of their parents in the kitchen. Their mother was standing over the griddle, flipping plate-sized golden pancakes, while their father sat at the kitchen island reading a sheaf of papers intently. There was a large jug of orange juice on the counter and a plate of bacon already set out. Caden grabbed a piece, letting out an ah as it was still hot before crunching it down. Tilly poured orange juice. Their parents said nothing. Tilly and Caden's gazes met. She jerked her head towards their silent parents, indicating for him to start talking. He finished his bacon and reached for another slice. Tilly slapped his hand and pointed at their parents. No more bacon until he said something. "Mom, Dad, I know you're mad," he began. "Why on earth would we be mad?" their father said as he flipped pages of the brief before him angrily. "It's not like you completely disappeared. Didn't even contact us even after a bomb went off. And we learned you're supposedly okay because the jackbooted thugs called the Claw came here in the middle of the night." Caden winced. He hadn't thought of his parents at all last night. Their mother looked over at him with worry, but then her gaze went to their father. She didn't look angry, just sad, as if they'd had an argument about this. Considering she was the one that saw the white dragon spirit as some kind of god, she couldn't exactly question what he did at the same time, even if Caden sometimes wanted her to. But she'd been scared for him. Their father's fear for him was greater because he didn't see Caden as anything but a victim of all of this. "You were scared I was hurt, but you know I can't be. Not by a bomb," he reminded their father. Then with an uncomfortable laugh, "I mean, been there, done that, got to become a shifter." Tilly gave him a, "Come on, get real." "Look, I'm sorry I worried you, but Valerius thought it was best there be no electronic record of me being anywhere last night." "Valerius said? Valerius is all the control here?" Their father had spun around on the stool to face him. There were hectic splotches of color on their father's cheeks. "He is the king?" Caden said lamely. That only seemed to be a match to their father's gasoline-soaked flame. "He is an unelected leader who is only in charge of certain things because he can turn anyone and anything into a cinder, Dad? Yeah, that's maybe a little true. But that's not why I did as he asked," Caden said, feeling a slight sense of resentment that their father was talking about his friend, his boyfriend, his lover, the king, that way. "Then why did you do it?" their father demanded to know. "Because he was right," Caden said. "Using a phone leaves a trace. People can see where I've been. It's better not to do that." "The neighbors are asking about the people who stopped by our house last night," their mother said, rolling her lips together afterwards, a thing she did when anxious. Caden let his head hang forward. "Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I assumed Shione would call you, but she probably didn't for the same reason Valerius didn't want me calling you either, records. It was also the reason that Valerius hadn't been able to drive him all the way home the night before. Instead, they had parked the car in another far-off location in reach. Caden remembered how they had both sat there, the engine ticking, as they contemplated leaving one another. The flying had been thrilling, but it was the playing that had seemed to cement something between them. They'd played the equivalent of tag and hide-and-go-seek for ages. Well, they'd hid as much as dragons can. Io Lair had felt they had the advantage in that, because they were smaller than Raziel and Valerius. However, when their big white butt was sticking out behind a hill, there wasn't much difference in effort to find them. Caden had been able to hear Raziel and Valerius's delight in all of it, and the night had ended just before the sun had come up, with them flying wingtip to wingtip through the air as the sky lightened. They had finally landed and shifted back into human forms before silently pulling on clothes. Caden had felt almost strange being in their human form again. The quiet between them lasted on the drive back to Reach. It wasn't uncomfortable, not at all. Caden could feel Valerius's presence not only beside him, but in his mind. It was as if they were holding hands mentally. Caden hadn't been brave enough to take Valerius' nearest physical hand in his. He'd told himself at the time that it was because Valerius was driving and he didn't want to distract him. But the truth was, he hadn't been sure that he was welcome to. They hadn't discussed the kiss either. They hadn't really even acknowledged it. Was it a one-off? The start of something? What did ancient dragon shifters think about relationships? Maybe Valerius just assumed Caden knew what he meant when he kissed him. And that's what Caden had been contemplating as the engine cooled and the dawn was about to come. Valerius shifted in his seat to look over at him. Caden did the same. His heart beat rapidly. His mouth was dry. Maybe he's going to kiss me again, Caden thought. But Valerius did not move towards him, and his expression was unreadable. I am sorry I cannot take you all the way home, Valerius said. Caden's mouth opened and shut and then opened again. Thanks for wanting to. Valerius smiled. Of course. I've picked one of the spots close to your home so I know the way, Caden assured him. It's 5 minutes in that direction. He pointed vaguely towards his home. Valerius nodded. Well then, we should say good night. I don't know if you have to work today. I do, but I'd want to go in the store anyways. Talk to Rose, Wally, and Landry about last night? Another nod. Yes, but do be careful regarding who you speak in front of. We're not going to discuss this in front of customers. Caden sounded affronted, but he wondered if they had done that yesterday. He couldn't quite remember. Of course you aren't, Valerius said, but it was more a command than an agreement. What are you going to do? King stuff? Caden wanted this conversation to keep going, for Valerius to stay a little longer, so that maybe he might get the courage up to ask about that kiss and what it meant. I hope you are enjoying Dragon's Reign so far. I've been talking a lot about the membership site I have, but I also do publish individual books under the pen name Ex Artare, which have the same type of adventurous plot, magic around every corner, and happily ever afters as Dragon's Reign. While there are some genuinely dark moments in Dragon's Reign, I save some of my darker ideas for the Bodyguard series. The Bodyguard is a gay detective occult romance. The book contains a sexy bodyguard, his determined young client, an ancient golden sarcophagus, a bloodthirsty cult, an unsolved mystery, and both of our heroes' pasts. A link to the Bodyguard series is in the description down below. At first, Valerius's expression was blank as he repeated, king stuff. Yeah, you know, whatever you do every day. Caden shrugged. Valerius leaned forward and brought his left hand up to his face as he laughed slightly. Oh, yes, that. Ruling the world, you mean? Yeah, that. World ruling, being important, being you. It was both harder and easier to imagine Valerius as the mighty Dragon King. Caden had experienced the serious side of Valerius, way too much of it in his opinion. But tonight, he'd seen the fun side, the side where dragon butts wiggle before they pounce. Being me, Valerius stared out of the windshield. I told Shione when she sought me out, just before the shifters revealed themselves, that I didn't want to be king. I didn't even want to be around people, let alone angry, afraid people. I totally get that. Caden watched as the sky lightened and a beam of sunlight touched Valerius's chin. He resisted the urge mightily to do the same. After all, what if he reached out and touched and found it was unwelcome? Then any fantasy he had that the kiss might really mean something would be vanquished forever. I think maybe you do. You don't seek power yourself. You want to be left alone, Valerius said. Caden's mouth did that annoying goldfish thing of opening and shutting. He thought of lunch that day with Rose and his sister and Jane's reaction. Yeah, but then again, there was this woman. She runs the bakery next door to Wally's, and she was really awful to Rose. Well, at first, she was awful, but then she sort of came around. If she'd known I was the white dragon, I don't know if she would have done that. It wasn't just because Rose was a shifter or even a swarm shifter, but because she was from the below, too. What if I could do something to help people by being the white dragon? Valerius nodded slowly. There is some validity to that. What you say and do could have a great impact for certain. Yeah, but I make a lot of mistakes. And if I said or did the wrong thing, then bad things could happen, right? Caden asked. Yes, that is right. Valerius' eyes were on his face, studying him. You have a good heart, Caden. So does Eolair. But once you take on the mantle of power, you cannot put it down again. Yeah, and with all the craziness with the bombs and humans first, a wrong move could lead to really bad outcomes. Caden scrubbed his face with his hands, feeling the sand behind his eyelids, telling him it was well past time to go to bed. It's only been a few days, Caden. I know that to you it must feel like a decision must be made right away, but it doesn't. You have all of eternity to figure out what you want to be and how you want to interact with the world, Valerius assured him. And for a moment, it looked like he was going to reach over and stroke Caden's cheek again. But then his hand curled into a fist and he dropped it to his lap. But dawn is breaking. We both need to get back before anyone sees us. Caden nodded. The words about the kiss died before they even reached his tongue. He told himself it was because they needed a long time to discuss it, and not because he was too chicken to say them. With one last glance at the Dragon King, Caden had hurried back to his home and his bed. Now, way too few hours between getting into his bed and standing in front of his parents had passed. I told everyone that they're from your father's work, a new case he has, their mother said, referring to the claw that had showed up on their doorstep last night. The fact that Valerius is using his military arm to interact with us and with Caden is not acceptable, their father said. Dad, it's because he trusts them that he's using them. If he sent Shoni or someone else, people would notice. Word would spread, Caden pointed out. Their mother finally brought the platter of pancakes over to the island and started putting some on his plate. She also set out syrup she had warmed and sweet cream butter. I'm sorry that you were worried about me. I get it that things are tense and different. I didn't mean for you to be, Caden said as their mother buttered his pancakes for him, which was so odd, but so motherly too that he didn't point it out. Caden, we need to know where you are, their father sighed, brushing his dark hair off of his forehead. You look tired, Dad. Guilt pricked at Caden. Thanks, son. I so appreciate being reminded. I just meant that you look like you're working really hard, and you are. For me, Caden said. For all of us, Caden, his father answered. What happens to you affects this entire family. I just don't know if I can promise that you'll know where I am every second of the day, Caden found himself saying. He had to explain how things were going to be. He clenched his hand around his fork. I need to shift every day, so that means I have to get away when I can. I won't be able to call you and tell you all the time. And there will be things with Valerius that I have to do. What things do you have to do with Valerius? Their father's voice was a touch sharp. He didn't like the Dragon King, obviously. Dragon shifter stuff? And that hardly sounded better than king stuff. He's teaching me how to do all of this. Eolair is so laid back that I didn't realize it needed to get out more. I have to make sure that I don't harm the spirit. Valerius is the only one who can tell me. He's not the only one, Caden. There are other dragon shifters in this world. 7 others, their father reminded him. But Caden was shaking his head before their father had even finished saying that. I don't want them. I just want Valerius. Their father's eyes narrowed. Tilly even looked a little alert. Caden played back his words and winced. His crush on the ancient Dragon King had slipped right in there. He absolutely couldn't let his parents know about that and the mate thing. Their father would have him whisked away in a red-hot minute from Reach and Valerius if he knew. Not that he could stop Valerius from finding us, if Valerius would want to find us, Caden thought. Eolair continued to snooze contentedly. He was alone in his worries. I meant, Caden decided to clarify, that I want to keep who knows I'm the white dragon shifter to the one other dragon shifter that already knows. Valerius. The others are coming to meet you. Their father completed the sentence not in the way that Caden had intended. not to meet me, to check me out, see if I'm a threat or whatever. He would not say mate. He would not say mate. They likely wish to know if you want your slice of the earth, a territory of your own, their father said. Well, I don't, Caden answered. Their father's head rose. Don't be so hasty to say that, Caden. Think about being beholden to Valerius or whatever other dragon shifter's territory you're in. If you had your own, you wouldn't have to worry about Dad. I don't want my own territory. I don't know the first thing about ruling people. Besides, assuming they would give me anything, it would be like Antarctica or something, where there are no people and it's too cold or too hot or whatever. It would suck, Caden told him, feeling a mounting panic at the idea of their father pushing this territory thing. We would ensure that doesn't happen, their father answered. Who are we exactly? Caden asked. Me and your other lawyers, of course. I have lawyers. Caden's eyebrows rose up. You mean your firm, or they are your lawyers, Caden? I am your lawyer, and we are going to make sure that you get what's yours, his father said. Their father looked so determined and proud at that moment that Caden didn't want to burst his bubble. He saw Tilly drinking orange juice to keep whatever words in that she had wanted to come out. Dad, you can't lawyer me into a territory. No dragon is going to give up even an inch of land for another dragon. I'd have to fight them for it, and I'm not a fighting type of dragon. Caden thought of the terror he'd felt facing Valerius. Even if he were to fight one of the smaller dragons, they were far bigger than him and knew the way of aerial combat. He'd also thought of how Valerius had gotten his spirit in battle. The others, Valerius claims, have received theirs in similar terrible circumstances. So that's not happening, Dad, okay? Besides, Valerius told me I could stay in his territory. Had Valerius said that explicitly? Or had Caden just said he was staying and Valerius hadn't drop-kicked him out? But what about the kiss, Caden thought. That must mean he wants me to stay. Damn it, I should have talked to him this morning about it. Now I don't know where I stand. He doesn't have any right to remove you. Their father was quivering, likely with, again, legal arguments. We are a nation of laws. The world is governed by them, not by the size of your dragon? Tilly asked. There was silence around the island, but then their mom, Tilly, and Caden laughed. Their father finally did too. After the chuckles died away, their father said, Seriously, the shifters want to be seen as human in some ways. Not animals. So your situation needs to be handled in a civilized manner, in the courts, not by dragon battles. That's what the world will want. That's what the shifters overall will want. The dragons must know this. The law will protect you, Caden. You'll see. Caden didn't say anything. Their father believed in the law, and he'd never seen his father so enthused about it. It was as if this had revived their father's hopes and dreams. And maybe it had. He would be partner in more than name now in his firm. He would be in charge of things because his son was the white dragon shifter. I hope you enjoyed this week's chapter. Just a reminder that if you join Wraith Reign as a member, the membership is 15 to 20 episodes ahead of the free podcast. If you'd like to join and listen to all those extra podcasts, not to mention getting access to the other stories and manga on Wraith Reign, a link is down below.